Hello and welcome back to another episode of All Sports Talk Now. Today we're going over the western region of the NCAA bracket. We went over the southern region last time around and we gave our picks on who's going to make it to the Final Four. I'm Bennett Rhodes. I'm joined by James Fusco and Shane Smith. And again, for this episode, if you saw our last episode, Rashad Christian will not be here. We're hopeful to have him for the other two regions. But let's get right into this one, guys. No question, Oregon wins the first game here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But St. Joe's and Cincinnati, this is an interesting one. St. Joe's wins their conference over VCU, who's also in this bracket. But I go St. Joe's here. How about you guys?
I agree. I'm saying St. Joe's just because of how well they've been playing lately. I just think that Cincinnati isn't going to be able to beat this St. Joe's team.
And I'm also taking St. Joe's here just to keep it short.
Okay, so this one's interesting. Baylor, really? I combined the two. Baylor versus this. Okay, let me restart. This one's interesting. Baylor versus Yale. The 5 versus 12. We talked about, I think, last episode how interesting these 5 versus 12 games can be. I go with Baylor, but I think this could be an interesting one. What do you guys think?
So Baylor versus Yale here, 5-12, and Baylor. This is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They don't defend the three well, but they have a big presence on the inside. That being said, Yale has played some quality teams. Obviously, winning the Ivy League, first trip to the big dance in a while, and so Yale, they've played teams like Duke, and even though they lost by I believe 19 to Duke, they played them tight for most of the game. So I think despite Baylor's presence on the offensive boards, Yale is actually going to provide the 12 versus 5 upset this year.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Shane, just because of Yale. This is a team that I see that the way that they're playing right now, I just see them being able to knock off Baylor, who's also struggled in recent NCAA tournaments in the first round, considering last year that they lost to Alabama Birmingham. But I just think that Yale has the potential to create this upset. That's why I'm going with them on this one.
Okay, so this 4 versus 13 matchup, Duke versus UNC Wilmington. I think we all have Duke here. Not much of a question there.
Yeah, Duke opens as a 9.5-point favorite, and despite UNC Wilmington, they're pretty much good at most things, but I don't think they can compete with Duke. Duke wins.
Agreed.
Okay, so moving on. This one is an interesting one because Northern Iowa versus Texas, the 11 versus 6. Northern Iowa, I have them losing, but I think it'll be really close because it's been the tale of two different teams for Northern Iowa. They beat UNC when they were number 1 in the country. They beat Iowa State, but then we have there's some questionable losses throughout there. They have beaten Wichita State, another tournament team, 2 out of the 3 times they've played them, but at the same time, it's like I don't know if the Northern Iowa team that we've seen at its best will be able to show up in the tournament against a team like Texas.
I agree with you, but I see a possibility for an upset here, just because of Northern Iowa. Like you said, they beat North Carolina by 4 points. They beat Stephen F. Austin, another tournament team, by 10. They beat Iowa State back when they were the 5 seed by a 2-point margin. And they've just been playing really well as a team and as a unit. They've won their last 6 games in their conference as well. And I just don't think that they can win this game. However, it will be a really close one, so I'm going with Texas.
And I'm also going with Texas here. Obviously, Northern Iowa beat Carolina, but if you'll remember, back then Marcus Page was out with a broken hand. So you can't really count on that. And Texas has done well in the Big 12. They've been ranked for a good portion of the year. So no upset here. Texas advances.
Yep.
Okay, so this next matchup will be we'll keep it short here. I got Texas A&M, even though we've seen some 3 versus 14 upsets before. There's no question here. I like Texas A&M team.
Yeah, no upset here. Texas A&M wins.
Yeah, Texas A&M's too strong of a team to lose to Green Bay. I think Texas A&M wins handily.
Okay, and then this is one we all unanimously think that this will be. It's not an incredible upset to 10 versus 7. We see it year in and year out, but we all have VCU here, and over Oregon State. So, talk about that a little bit, guys.
Well, Moali Cox, the star for this VCU team, a beast on the inside on the boards. Oregon State not going to be able to hang with them. VCU wins.
I just think that Oregon State, I feel like they didn't deserve this 7 seed. Don't get me wrong, they're a good team, but I don't think that they're that good of a team that they should have been a 7. But in this one, I just see VCU. They're a tournament team year in and year out. Even though they lost Shaka Smart, I think VCU still wins this one.
Okay, and then I think we're all going with Oklahoma here.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt.
So then we go back up. So we have, I think we all chose St. Joe's and Oregon. I'm going Oregon here. I think Oregon's just way too strong, even though St. Joe's is a team that's fought through the season, win the conference tournament. I just think Oregon's too strong.
I'm going to have to disagree. I think St. Joe's has the potential to win this game just because of how they're playing right now. They have a lot of momentum behind them, and they beat another team in this conference, VCU, by a handily margin in their conference championship game. So I see St. Joe's winning this game just by a slight margin.
Well, when you look at Ken Palm rankings here, Oregon one of if not the worst 1 seed in NCAA tournament history in terms of strength wise, and you have them against St. Joe's. Both teams won their conference title, but when you compare the level of competition, Oregon was able to handle Utah easily in the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon advances.
Okay, then we have the always interesting 4 or 5 matchup. We have Duke and Baylor here. I go with Baylor just by a little bit, but I think Duke can definitely win this game. The thing is, I'm moving on to the Sweet 16 just for a second here, is that I think whoever wins this game can beat Oregon. Whether it's Duke or Baylor, I think they both have the talent. I go with Baylor by a slight margin.
Well, you have this as a 4-5 matchup, and but I believe James and I both have Yale advancing here, so a little 12 versus 4 matchup. And Yale did play Duke early on in the year. Duke, it was a close game for most of the part, but Duke able to pull away at the end there in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Don't think this is going to be any different. Duke should easily handle Yale and advance to go see number 1 seeded Oregon in the Sweet 16.
I agree with you with the 12-4 matchup with Yale. I just see Yale being this team that can pull off an upset against Baylor, and then I just don't see them being a Duke team with the talent that Duke has. If Duke plays their best basketball, I don't think that they're going to lose to this Yale team. And I see them going on to play St. Joe's in the Sweet 16.
Okay, then we have, I believe we all had the 2 Texas teams, Texas and Texas A&M, even though we talked about Northern Iowa being a threat. I go with Texas A&M here. I just think they're too strong. This Texas team is good, but I just don't think they're good enough to hang with a team like Texas A&M, which I think is a lot more consistent and a lot better ultimately, for this kind of scenario.
Well, Texas A&M, one of the stronger teams on the boards, very big team, and going up against a Texas team that's very guard-based, led by Felix, I believe, the guard from Texas, and Texas A&M just going to own the boards. They win the Battle of Texas, advancing to the Sweet 16.
Well, in this one, there's multiple ways to see this one. I just think that with how Texas has been playing this year, with a new coach and just how Shaka Smart coaches, I see Texas maybe pulling off this upset. But Texas A&M, like you guys said, is a really strong team on the boards and stuff. So it's going to be a close game, and it's going to come down the wire. But I see Texas pulling this one out and getting the 6-3 match.
Okay, so then the next one here, I think we all had VCU, Oklahoma. I do think VCU are always a great tournament team. It's always fun to see them play, but I gotta go with Oklahoma here in the end. Just these lower seeds, and when they get in the double digits in the seeds, I just don't they can't keep up the same way with these really high seeds, and I think Oklahoma is ultimately just better in against VCU just down the stretch. I think VCU is a team that won't be able to keep up.
Buddy Hield, in the year of the senior, National Player of the Year, going up against a VCU team that is very strong defensively, but don't get me wrong, Buddy Hield, best player in the country, he will be able to take on VCU with the right balance of pieces around him, and Oklahoma going on to face Texas A&M.
I think that Buddy Hield is a really strong player, but in the matchup that he just had against West Virginia, when West Virginia shut him down completely, it was hard for Oklahoma to generate offense because they feed off of him basically. He drives that team. But so if VCU can play defense on Buddy Hield and deny him all his shooting opportunities, I feel like VCU, with the way that they play in tournaments, they have a chance to win this game, but I just don't see it happening. I see Oklahoma prevailing and going on to play Texas in the Sweet 16.
Okay, so I believe we had all three different scenarios here for the Sweet 16. I had Oregon and Baylor, 1 versus 5 matchup. But like I said a little earlier, I think I had Duke versus Baylor in the round of 32. I think whoever wins that game, I pick Baylor, like I said, can beat Oregon, and I think Baylor does go on to beat Oregon. I just think, again, like Shane said, this Oregon team, I don't think they deserve the number 1 seed, and I think it's a lot of pressure on this team, and I don't think they'll be able to take down a team like Baylor. I think Baylor comes up with a win here and gets to the Elite 8.
I had a different matchup. I had St. Joe's and the 8 seed against Duke, the 4 seed. But going back to talk about Oregon being the 1 seed, if they had beaten St. Joe's, I just don't see them advancing at this point. But I think they're going to be overconfident since they're a 1 seed, so they think they're so much better than everyone. So I see them losing, and then St. Joe's coming in this one. If St. Joe's beats the 1 seed, I think they'll have enough momentum, and I see them being able to maybe pull off this upset and beat Duke in this one. It just depends on how both the teams are playing at the time. And so I see St. Joe's advancing to play Oklahoma.
So I have Oregon, 1 seed, Duke, 4 seed. No upsets on this side of the bracket until now. Duke, strong core, led by Grayson Allen and Brandon Ingram. And Oregon, not a lot of star power, just a team that plays together. But this is going to come back to hurt them here. Duke is going to handle Oregon, advancing to the Elite 8 for the 2nd straight year.
Yeah, I think in the end here we can all agree that really this Oregon team is not really we won't consider them really a favorite to do anything special. So I mean, if anyone's watching that's maybe wondering, is this Oregon team going to be able to do something special this year? I think we're all thinking that this Oregon team is not going to get past the Sweet 16. So that's very interesting. We all say that. And now moving on, this matchup, I have Oklahoma and Texas A&M. I think James, did you have Texas?
I have Texas and Oklahoma. I just see Texas beating Texas A&M in the round of 32.
Yeah, I go Texas A&M here. Even though how good this Oklahoma team has been, this Texas A&M team has been, they finished off the year really good. They had that point in the middle of the year, beginning of conference play, where they were really struggling. But it's always great to see a team bounce back, and I think they can continue to bounce back, even though they did lose in overtime to Kentucky in the conference tournament. I do still like Texas A&M here, moving on to play Baylor in my Elite 8. Yeah.
And
I like
here I have Texas A&M. I had Texas A&M and Oklahoma here, but again, as I mentioned in the previous matchup with Oklahoma and VCU, Oklahoma has Buddy Hield and Texas A&M doesn't. and that is going to be the factor here. Oklahoma moving on to play the 4 seed Duke.
I have Oklahoma winning this game against Texas, but if Texas A&M does manage to beat Texas, I just feel like Texas A&M's. I feel like they could shut down Buddy Hield, but I see Buddy Hield just taking over this game against Texas and advancing to play St. Joe's.
Okay, then we have our Elite Eight matchup, which is I have Baylor versus Texas A&M. But like I said, I do think ultimately it could be it's up for grabs, this Elite Eight spot, because I do think Texas A&M moves on. I think even if it's Duke, which I said could definitely move on, even if Oregon gets to this point, which we all agreed they probably wouldn't, I do think Texas A&M is ultimately the best team in the West, and I think they make it to the Final Four. And for me, that would be against Villanova. So those are my that's my pick for the West. Is Texas A&M coming out?
That's an interesting pick, but I see Oklahoma with Buddy Hield just being too strong of a team for St. Joe's to handle. I feel like St. Joe's will just. I feel like with the momentum they have, they can beat some higher caliber teams, but I just don't see them being able to beat Oklahoma in this matchup. They're both pretty good teams when it comes to scoring, but Oklahoma, I just see them lighting a fire and just going on to win this one, and I see them playing Kansas in the Final Four.
So my matchup here is Duke, Oklahoma, and the way Duke's played all year has been live by the 3, die by the 3, shoot a ton of threes throughout games throughout the year. And if Duke makes their threes, they can win this game. But coming off one day of rest, which Duke has not done well against this year, it's going to be tough for them to make their threes. Oklahoma, much more of a driving-based team. Oklahoma wins. And they are into the Final Four to play Miami.
And an interesting stat, just to bring up, even though I had Baylor moving on, I did notice, so I just was looking at the Blue Devils' schedule. They beat both Virginia and North Carolina, so something to keep in mind there is they've beaten 2 number 1 seeds, which I'm not sure if any other team has been able to do that, but that's very impressive. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you are correct. Duke, the only team in the field to have beaten 2 number 1 seeds.
Very impressive. Very impressive. But ultimately, we'll see what will happen out there with the Western region. Thank you guys for watching. Again, we'll hopefully have Rashad Christian, the 4th member of the crew, back with us for the other part of the bracket, which would be the East and the Midwest. For James Fusco and Shane Smith, I'm Bennett Rhodes. Thanks for watching All Sports Talk Now.